So the shoulder split is simple. You got to work all three dimensions of the shoulders. You get enough front shoulder activation when you do chest presses. So I've gotten really away from specialized shoulder programs.
Hmm.
Um,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't know. I feel like I could talk about my shoulder routine for hours.
All day. Well, that reminds me it reminds me of a podcast that I've listened to. And the problem with this podcast is it's a business podcast, or an entrepreneurial podcast. And, you know, they too wax and wane on for hours about their workout routine, which I could care less about. I want to hear about the business, and they spend an hour and a half talking about their stupid workout routines. In fact, it got to the point actually where one guy, he's got type 2 diabetes, which he talks about on the show. I don't know the guy, but he's telling me, and he's telling the show in one moment, he's like, I don't know what to do. My blood sugar ranges anywhere from 280 to 320. And I'm listening to this, I'm just like, what the fuck? And he's worried about like his workout routine. I literally went on his Discord because they have a Discord for their show, and I said, dude, you are running at 280. You got to stop worried about your stupid whether a run is 5 miles or whatever he was talking about. I was like, you need to worry about your diet, dude. Like you're killing yourself. You're going to lose your organs, and if you don't like stop this, because I've
Hmm.
heard him as a diabetic for the past 10 years. So anyway, it got that bad where, and then he actually mentioned me on the show. He's like, oh, this guy, this listener, he told me I need to worry, start thinking about this, and maybe I should. And I'm like, yeah,
That's
dumbass.
great.
Anyway, the point
Although
is,
you can't organ shame someone because that is borderline ableism.
yeah, I'll shame the shit out of him. It's as a diabetic, by the way, listeners, I am a diabetic of many years now,
You're diabetic?
30 years. That's right. That's
Are you making that up for the
shocking.
podcast or is that real
Yeah, I'm making this up for drama. As a
for the views?
diabetic of 30 years, I believe in shaming other diabetics for their poor quality and choices,
Yeah, I
and
don't
I
think
think
you're
of
being
it as a
ironic.
service, like God's service. It's my contribution to their lives. I hope they listen. No, not to be mean, but just to save their organs, no big deal.
No big deal. No, actually, this is interesting. This make America healthy again thing. A lot of
Yeah.
people, I think, liked originally. I know a lot of people who actually kind of liked a lot of things that RFK Jr. was saying because there are, once again, this is the problem with populism writ large, is
Hmm.
that there are valid gripes.
Exactly.
I have a ton of gripes about how American medicine works, not just insurance company, business end, but
Yeah.
doctors. Um, their lack of humility, their lack of open mindedness, and I understand
Yep.
why. Western medicine has racked up a lot of wins, and there's a lot of things to celebrate. And I think all medical interventions are risky. And when I don't know, people out there, they think homeopathy has no risk. And it's like, okay, well, see Steve Jobs for the amount of risk you're running on the
Yeah.
homeopathic front. But
Yeah.
to me, there's a valid complaint, right? We can make our medical system better, not just the business and insurance side, not the payment side, but also the actual care you receive.
Hmm.
Bill Maher talks about this on his show. He's like, I go to the doctor very few times when I've been sick or have a problem, very few times does he ask me, what's your diet like? What do you eat?
Yeah. Hmm.
And that should be the first thing. It should be the first and
Exactly.
last thing. Because, but I don't know why. There's like a cultural aversion in our country to not wanting to talk about that. And the medical field is very happy to let us go, right? I, the closest I've ever gotten, I've always been kind of overweight. The closest I've ever gotten is that I go in there with a flu, and then my doctor would say, you know what, this would be easier to treat if you were 15 pounds lighter. And I
Hmm.
did not like to hear it.
How interesting.
But their job isn't for you to get them to like you. Their job is to make you
Yeah.
healthier. And so
Hmm.
that's why the very legitimate gripe about the medical industry, the pharmaceutical industry. I mean, my God, right? But then the
Totally.
solutions they reach for are the silliest, counterproductive, extreme thing there is.
Right.
It's like politicians who get power have no idea how to moderate anymore. And I mean that for the Biden administration, there were so many parts of the immigration policy, if you want to even call it that. They barely had one, by the way. And I was working uh, directly on this topic, talking to people who were involved in this.
Mm.
There's barely a policy there. People on the ground in Latin America who were shocked by pronouncements like the temporary protected status for Venezuelans overnight. It was not even consulted
Mm.
at their
Wow.
embassies. It's just, you can't have a moderated stance anymore. I don't know why. People don't want to govern. They just want to campaign forever. And health is one of those things where what a great opportunity to change things around. You have an outsider leading on the medical front. You have an outsider
Hmm.
being president. There's so many things you could change,
Yeah.
and uh, health is one of these things where, like, why aren't why aren't they doing more? I know the answer to that. It's
Well,
because you're not actually interested in changing the status quo. The status quo has a lot of money
yeah,
and power.
very true. I was thinking about that comment that you've said a few times now, which is the dangers of populism. And it did hit me. I don't know, I was at a grocery store thinking about this the other day that indeed the thing about populism is that darn, they make a lot of sense on a number of issues. And you
Yeah,
can't you kind of have to say, well, that's true, that's good. And yet the and yet at the same time, what's complicated about it is that the way often populism work is a power grab, right? So they're grabbing and
yeah,
taking more power and justifying that grabbing of power with, well, something needs to be done, and it's not going
yeah,
well the way it was going before. So we need to do this. I was listening to the All In podcast today, and again, I'm disappointed with their basically like the new puppets of the administration, where they kind of defend anything they're doing, except for one of them. And so the topic was, should we put military, into the streets? That should we militarize every city? And yeah, they made some good points. Yeah, there are certainly they had one really compelling quote from a black woman who had been around a long time, I think in DC. I don't know, I didn't catch her name. She was sound like she was either a politician or someone important. And she said, I can't believe that after only 9 months of Trump being in power, I've heard from so many of my community members that I feel safe for the first time. And she was like, I don't want to be the one to say it. I don't even like the guy kind of thing, but I have to say, why is it that suddenly our streets are safe and I actually feel comfortable? Maybe the people before didn't actually care about us, even though they said they did. And I was like, yeah, I resonate with, of course, I'm listening. I'm like, okay, I resonate with some of what she's saying for sure. But and I can understand the frustration, but the problem
mm,
is that if the answer is a pattern of just every time there's some problem, let's throw the military into the streets, that becomes the precedent. And yes, there's maybe you could justify a reason, but there's always going to be a reason. I'm sure every dictator has had their very good reasons why they had to do why they had to
yeah,
shut someone up, or they had to do this or they had to do that. I mean, you could go to the ends of the earth justifying stuff to take
correct,
power and to break and to cross the line, but the whole point of the Constitution was to prevent that from happening. So it
correct.
is I think it's difficult because the populism, it only works. Populism is only effective when it's speaking common sense. And the unfortunate thing is we've had administrations on both sides that were talking out of their ass and they were not
Yeah,
talking common sense. And now
that
when
was the
one comes
status
out of the
quo.
blue, yeah, exactly. That's
Yeah,
the status
that was
quo. We
status
were all
quo for so
frustrated by
long.
it.
Because that was under, I think, a different kind of society and culture,
Yeah.
strong norms that governed, and so people could, it was just not appropriate to say certain things. uh, yeah, I mean, I'm not a political scientist. I write a lot about politics, but it's just one of those things where I've seen it in other countries. I was having dinner with these kind of like international people. A lot of them were from Latin America, and I said, you know what Trump is doing, this is what happens in Latin American countries, by the way. Latin American
Mm,
countries, the people there is a huge amount of, there's a huge amount of, uh, what do they call inequality. The richest people control everything. The same families have
mm,
controlled everything for the longest time in a lot of
mm,
countries in Latin America. And it gets to a point where there's always something that gets people upset. maybe it's a depression, it's a recession.
Mm.
They see rich people always benefiting and always on top, and then the average person gets screwed all the time, and wages aren't going
Mm-hmm.
up. And so a populist comes along, and yeah, sometimes it's from the
Mm.
military, but it's always a tough guy. It's always a tough guy,
Right.
you know. And he goes like, "I'm going to take a hard hand to these things," and the corrupt politicians haven't done anything about it because they're in bed with the moneyed elite or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
In Latin America, it's often gangs and cartels that they
Mm.
say that these politicians are in bed with, rings of corruption that steal from the people. I'm an outsider from the military or from wherever, and I'm going to fix it. But you got to give me the power to do it,
Yeah, give
because
me the
these
power.
guys,
Yeah.
what I'm up against, that's pretty terrible. And so people are so desperate after failed politician after failed politician promising the world, then they elect someone and they look the other way as this person amasses
Yeah.
power, because they've done such a great job of legitimizing gripes. That's what populism is
Yeah.
about. It's about
Mm-hmm.
complaints. It's never about solutions. It is never, ever, ever about solutions. It is only about uh, gripes. It's only about complaints, right?
Yeah.
That's the way it works in Latin America. That's why Daniel Ortega is basically running a dictatorship in Nicaragua right now.
Mm.
That's why Guatemala has corrupt president after corrupt president. They finally elected someone who's democratic minded, not part of a corrupt circle of power, because he came
Mm.
literally out of exile, because his
Mm.
father was a president who was
Interesting.
exiled from Guatemala, grew up overseas, came back to Guatemala and tries to fix it, but he can't because the corruption networks are too strong.
Mm.
They had every opportunity try to make him look corrupt, which is insane. And they find every opportunity to tear him down. Rumors that his wife is a lesbian because her hair isn't long,
Mm.
stuff like that. So
Like a Spartan.
playing to divisive conservative social cultural issues. And then meanwhile, the people who are at the center of corruption, the people who take power, don't do anything about the gripes. If anything, they want the gripes to continue. They want to
Mm-hmm.
keep pointing. They keep finding out new things. There are new problems that they
Absolutely.
keep uncovering, right?
Yeah.
So, for the longest time, no one is fixing the immigration system because you have to pass a law, and it's the president's job
Yeah.
to run to when a president governs, it's a coalition, always a coalition. It's never just one person, and they have to gather broad support in the Senate and the House, using political connections, using political power to put together legislation that Congress is responsible for drafting, but the president can help set the agenda and move things forward and make
Right.
deals, right? But that has not happened in decades and decades. There's been nothing happening
No.
on
Right.
immigration. And Democrats, I do not understand why, at a national level, have not taken the problem seriously. They've been playing to their base and saying we're going to protect these noble people.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, man, but like treating the massive waves of undocumented immigration as if these people are noble. They're not all noble. I know a lot of
Yeah.
them. Uh, I've met a lot of people who are in the U.S. They're illegally. They're working really hard, work 2, 3 jobs,
Yeah.
a necessary contributor to the community and to the economy. And I've met people who are there and they pretend not to be married. They have 4 kids. They're on Medicaid. They're on
Mm-hmm.
Medicare. They're committing fraud, and they talk about it on their social media. They talk about how you can give birth to a
Mm.
baby for free in the U.S. and he's a citizen and he can get you citizenship when he's
Yeah.
18, and they'll pay for all his stuff. And people have asked me and my wife, because my wife is Latina, she's an immigrant. Um, we did it the right way, and we actually don't like talk about it a lot because it sounds like bragging when we talk to other immigrants. But they'll tell her like, "Oh, like are you on Medicaid or
Yeah.
Medicare?" And we're like, "No, like I have a job, I work, I don't qualify." "Oh, no, 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 but that's because you say you're married. If you just say you're not married, then she's a
Yeah.
single mom with we're supporting a couple of
Right.
kids.
Just get
Then the
divorced
birth
and
will
then
be
live
free,
together.
the health care will be
Mm-hmm.
free. They give you food stamps." And I'm like, Jesus Christ. And I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
you're a huge problem. But it's one side of the issue wants to make you think all the immigrants are like that. They're not.
Yeah.
A lot of Venezuelan immigrants that came had a lot of social media. Where once they got to New York after being shipped there by governors in the South, after they got sent there, and finally the New York mayor realized, oh wait, this isn't great. Chicago,
Hmm.
right? They realized that uh, these Venezuelans were on social media saying, look at this crappy hotel they have us in. Look at this terrible food they're serving us. And meanwhile, undocumented immigrants who came here to work and had to walk all the way up here and suffered and sacrificed
Yeah.
looked at that and they said, why do you think you get anything for free? So it's such a complex picture, but no
Yeah.
politician is willing to fix it. No politician is willing to be honest about it. And so there's so much uh, slight there. It's offensive for a poor working American to see
Mm-hmm.
people come in and expect things to be just handed to them, committing Medicare fraud, Medicaid fraud.
Yeah.
And it's a complex picture because it's also upsetting to see members of the community contributing economically get ripped apart by a secret police. And that's what I mean.
Absolutely.
I'm sorry, but at this point, ICE qualifies as a secret
It
police. There's
is. Yeah.
zero accountability. They snatch people off the streets. My mom grew up in a fascist country. That was a daily
That's
occurrence,
true. And
right?
that is absolutely the biggest issue that I have with it is, which I think,
And that's the
again, I think,
problem. There's no
yeah.
solution. It's just like look at all this illegal immigration and think about it, right? Uh, so the deportations are up. Not they're not. I think they're now beginning to touch upon historical levels, but not really.
Hmm.
Obama deported more people, but what's happening is there are less people showing up to the border without papers
Yeah.
because they're
Right.
scared to come here because of everything that's happened.
Yeah.
That's the biggest accomplishment of this administration is
Yeah.
to
Which I
get
think they
the
want to be
illegal
doing.
crossings down. But they've done it by terrorizing
Yes.
communities, right? So
Right.
like
Right.
there's no good solution there. Their solution was masked police with no accountability, snatching people off the streets. That's their solution, right? Like
Well, this is the
where
problem is that
where's
once
the
you start doing
legislation?
that, yeah, once you start making that a precedent, then it goes and it bleeds into other topics besides immigration. And then it suddenly becomes,
Absolutely. You want to send
hey, this
immigrants to
guy's a
third
political
countries?
enemy. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Trump says a lot of things, but that's one of the things he said. He said, well, maybe we should send our own criminals to that prison in El
Yeah,
Salvador.
exactly. Or you take a journalist that you don't like and you can say
Yeah.
he's a fraudster
This
or whatever
isn't
you
this isn't
can.
this isn't like panicking. He has said these
Right.
things,
Yeah,
right? He said it
absolutely.
is no Project 2025, but now he's implementing it. Russ Vought
Hmm.
is picking
Yeah.
apart. See, and most people don't know what the federal government does, right? They don't know that they provide a ton of services, but also the federal government has a ton of waste and a ton of overlap. So, where's the political incentive to show up and tell people, hey man, listen, we need to cut from this federal budget because there's so much waste and overlap. Also, the federal government does incredibly important things every day that you don't even realize. No politician will say those two things. No one. It's insane, right? And
Hmm.
so people are just having to flip back and forth between voting for the two extremes, hoping that something ends up in the middle. But that's not what's
Yeah.
happening. So we have an entire population with a lot of legitimate gripes and no earnest leader willing to actually meet most of the country in the middle because you can only get power by doing extreme things. And so that's how it was in the Biden administration. There's a ton of stuff they did to help reshore jobs and nearshore jobs, the
Yeah.
IRA, the CHIPS Act. Um, you
With
know,
with the Chips Act, by the way, I think we should talk about that maybe after this because I do think that that is,
oh,
to
let's
your
go. Let's
point.
go right into that. Let's go right into that because
Yeah.
this is
Well, I think it,
most issues are not that political or polarized
yeah,
in reality.
right.
No matter how much the politicians try to divide us, this is I probably is annoying at this point, but ideology and partisanship are the tools of the elite to divide the middle of the country. 60 to 80% of us
Mm.
have a lot in common, and there are issues that are important, but not as important as how we come together as a country and solve the big things, right? And so to me, it's just shocking that so many of these things are politicized because
Hmm.
that's how the elites want it. They want to, the 60 to 80% of us who agree on a lot of the important things. If we get divided by partisanship and ideology, culture war bullshit, then that's it. Then we are easily dominated by people who continue to get richer. To 10%
Mm.
of the most wealthy own 50% of all the wealth in this country. That's a high. almost as high as it was in the 1920s. We're going back to that.
Wow.
And that's because they've successfully divided us. They just divided us. And we're so easily divided. And the internet has only helped with this.
Hmm.
But anyway, chips.
Well, I do think that the last administration, because maybe they still believed in congressional power, at least did successfully pass that, which was kind of a big deal because they hadn't been able to make a case for infrastructure to that level for a long time.
Right.
And that was, you know, to your point, if populism is just dealing with gripes, which maybe a tariff could help solve, what's actually difficult is to actually put money where your mouth is, and to
Mm-hmm.
spend billions of dollars building up a chip industry that's been dying out for a while, and it really has been dying out. I mean, I think when we were in college, I remember building computers with my roommates in my college dorm room, and we were all using like the best you could get was an Intel chip. That was like, oh man, we got the Intel, like
Mm-hmm.
whatever they were doing at the time, Pentium or something, and Pentium 3, I don't know. And I remember we would go down to like the computer fair, pick up these chips, and it was cool because Intel was really ahead of the game. And then around 2010 to 12 is when you started to see the shift, and Intel lost their way, and they were suddenly overtaken by TSMC, but
Mm.
they didn't really know it yet. The writing was starting to get on the wall, and it was the moment that you saw Apple put these chips into their laptops, and they were fast, that you were like, oh shit, Intel's gone, Intel's done, because they're using completely different technology. And the reason that happened, for those who don't know, is because Intel, who was run by a bunch of engineers until the early 2000s, people like Andy Grove and stuff, were super obsessive. And his whole book, he has a famous book called Only the Paranoid Survive. Suddenly, they stop being paranoid and they replace people like him, not with engineers, but with Wall Street business school types. And the moment they do that, they took their eye off the ball. They stopped worrying about the technology. They started worrying about their profits and their bonuses. And they completely again, took their eye off the ball, and suddenly they lost. And it's so difficult. I mean, that was one of the fields where, yeah, if you're a CEO of like Pepsi, you're all good. I mean, worst that can happen is someone makes a better tasting cola and maybe you market the shit out of them. You can't do that with chips. If you lose your edge, that's death. You could be one generation behind, and you might be behind for the rest of your, for decades. And the fact that they let this happen is an abomination. The fact that they could not get this turned around, and they've been late, and it's just been a disaster. And the Chips Act did come in, and thanks to it, I think um, it's interesting because they had a guy named what was it? I can't remember his name, but he was from the old Intel days. He had gone, he'd run like VMware or something like that, and he came back to run it. They didn't give him a long enough time to kind of get the company together, so they just fired him a few months ago. But I just heard the other day that this turnaround CEO, who was an engineer, well respected, I think Pat Gelsinger is his name. Um, he had been working for 3 or 4 years to try to turn the company around and get ahead. And I finally heard that they are now releasing the first chips from his efforts after they fired him. And it looks like it's actually going to be pretty good. They're AI chips. They're looking promising. And for the first time, they're actually looking like decent chips. That is amazing. If it's true and they're actually competitive, it's going to be incredible. But what I would say is that couldn't have been done without the Chips Act. The other thing that I'm seeing, because I live in Arizona, is a massive amount of factories. I mean, I'm driving past these things, they're behemoths. And I just sent you a video the other day from this YouTube channel called Asianometry, which is this. Is
Mm-hmm.
this? I didn't. Did you listen to that, by the way?
I did.
Oh, good. Okay.
Fascinating, very granular detail. This guy is
Yeah.
obviously on the ground and heavily involved in the microchip industry. What a
Yeah.
great, what a great, and it's like, I mean, just the information this guy has in his head about the industry is really impressive.
His channel is a spectacular, by the way. He has if you like kind of history of technology, he has some really fascinating like videos on like why the Russians lost the computer race back in the 1950s. I mean, they're just
Hmm.
fascinating like topics that you're like, whoa, that's interesting. I never thought about that. Anyway, he's this, I think he's a chip engineer in Taiwan. I don't know who he works for or anything like that. Obviously, he sounds like he was also raised in the US.
You're
But
right.
anytime I listen to him on chips, like he knows his shit. And for him to say, wow, things are actually looking good in Arizona with the results with regard to the TSMC, I was like, damn, okay, I believe him because he doesn't really bullshit. He's
Right.
very down to earth, or he's very like just honest about it. And so I would say that that was kind of promising to hear. And what I kind of took away with it was like, wow, we've criticized. How many years do people say, oh well, we're not going to let the government take sides. Yes, we see China putting tons of government resources into this industry, but that's not how we do things in the US. In the US, we just let the companies fight it out, all this nonsense.
Hmm.
And well, let's pretend like, I guess to say that statement about how the US works is to ignore the fact that the military created the internet, and the U.S. government
Subsidies of
created
the
the
auto
atomic
and
bomb.
airline
Yeah,
industries.
exactly.
I mean, yeah,
Like
farming.
countless
Hello,
examples.
farming. Heavily
Right.
subsidized farming. Give me a break. No, I
Mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, it was funny because I was at dinner yesterday. I was talking about this. If you've ever been to Shanghai, all the speeds are high speed
Yeah.
trains. Zero high speed trains in U.S.
Zero.
Um,
One, I think.
there's a
Not very good.
narrative that the Chinese government tries to sell, which is that democracy doesn't work.
Yeah.
And if you go to Shanghai and then you go to Washington D.C. or New York, that narrative seems to fit pretty well. And
Sure.
if you look at the chaos our democracy has produced from a polarized electorate,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, uh,
Good
we
point.
are the United States is one of the most is becoming one of the most unstable developed countries there is.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it, but it's a false narrative, so it depends on what you value, right? So if you value straight, hard economic results, the Chinese Communist Party has produced the most, but they've started from a much lower place, right? A very low
Mm-hmm.
stage of development, brought 1 million people
True.
out of poverty. That's the statistic. There are still deeply poor pockets of China. And
Sure.
if you only go to Shanghai, you wouldn't know the other parts, right? You wouldn't know
Mm-hmm.
the rural parts where people abandoned the cities, left their kids
Yeah.
with grandparents and very vulnerable situations. There's still a ton of poverty. There's a ton of unemployment. Uh, their entire economy relies on overcapacity, subsidization. It relies on people saving money. It relies on people not being too much
Mm-hmm.
on the consumer side. But and I'm by no means an expert at this, but the other thing is they've created a ton of human suffering. There's a ton of
Mm-hmm.
human suffering behind China's development and its position as the world's
Sure.
production facility. And that's why they have to control the media. They don't want people to know. Most Chinese
Mm-hmm.
people don't know this. They don't, every time they've had to move a town or burn a person's house or kill a family or poison an entire town to have a chemical factory
Hmm.
with zero safeguards. Because how can you produce cheaply? How can you produce,
Exactly.
quickly, high volumes without poisoning the ground and killing people? You can't. And China has very successfully hidden this. It's not part of their narrative. So we had this debate yesterday over dinner, and I said, like, well, it depends what you value.
Yeah.
In the United States, if they want to make a mega project and there is a family of 5 people who live on a plot of land that they own and they want to get it out of the way to make a mega project, it's going to take time and it's going to be a hard issue. And if they want to build a factory to make, I don't know, to produce or process critical minerals, that's one of the goals of this administration, which is
Mm-hmm.
it's an interesting goal. I think it's a very useful goal. But if you do that with zero environmental regulation, you're going to poison the people you're trying to help. And
Right.
so, being a democracy, having a process, having strong norms, yes, it's been harder to make these mega projects. You cannot centrally plan a lot of these things. And so what we have is the values of not wanting to displace people by force, because in the United States we have a strong
Well,
culture around that. But the
I feel
the
like we
the
did
end
at one
result
time,
is a
right?
complete
Like
lack
it
of
wasn't.
development compared to some of the cities in China.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right. I think you're absolutely right. We have to choose what we care about. I do think that there was a time in this country, maybe I'm wrong because I wasn't there, where where people were able to get stuff done a lot faster. I think about I think about I had a great grandfather that owned a farm in the Central Valley of California, and they took it away from him. They came in and said, "Hey, this is sorry. We have an infrastructure project. We're going to pay you market rate," which was not actually very high. He lost a lot of money on it, and he was bitter the rest of his life about this. But I kind of also think, wow, that's amazing. How could I don't hear about that today? Whereas at one time that was kind of common when they built the highway system. They used eminent domain a lot and just kind of took over stuff.
Well, yeah, that was.
There's a clip. Oh, go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say they just treated it like a national security project, right? The excuse
Right.
that the Eisenhower administration used was that it would be a way to mobilize troops and vehicles, right? But that's an
What
excuse.
isn't it interesting? And so, but that also shows that that's the mindset people had at the time. Is it was very different. And there's a quote. There's a clip that maybe I can put in the show notes, but I'll probably forget to. That's a reel. It's a compilation reel of Newsom. Maybe I mentioned this last time of Newsom saying in 10 different clips from 1999 to 2025, um, I believe in the bullet train. We're going to build this thing. It's going to be great. And then it goes like 2005 and like, they're like, okay, what? He's like, it's going to be
Yeah,
incredible. And then it gets to like
yeah,
2016 and he's like, all right, we're still working on it, but I know it, then it gets to like 2018 and he's standing in front of this train stop that they took. I guess they built a mile track from somewhere to they built 1 mile track, and then he's like, and this is almost going to get to Bakersfield, and he literally says, I know some people are thinking that's a train to nowhere, and the and you're just cracking up because you're like, yes, everyone's thinking that, I'm sorry,
yeah.
but and then 2025, and he's like, yeah, I kind of give up on it. And it is kind of, and I'm not saying that
You
I'm
win.
not saying it's his fault per se, because I don't think it is his fault, but it is funny that he's sort of the punching bag. But I do think
Yeah,
it's the fault of what I would say at one time we were willing as a country, the citizens were willing to say, you know what? Yeah, national security. We almost didn't win this war, and they were out there fighting. And now, you know what? If Eisenhower says we need this highway, I'm not going to bitch about it. Sure, they could take my property away. They'll pay me. I think I don't know. I'm making an assumption here, but I think it has not that has not happened in a while. We're not used to that, and we have rejected that. Whereas I think in China they can say, "We're hey, your house is now a
yeah,
train. Tough luck. You want some money for it? We'll give you a little dough. Tough luck." And
yeah,
that's an interesting thing because right, unfortunately, we don't have the luxury now, I think, to have the values of independence that we would like. I think we have to become more communal minded because we now have
yeah,
a very strong competitor in the world, and we will we do face I would say we face this is why I sent you the message about. I thought it was interesting that in CNBC they were mentioning that the most spy activity that China has right now, if you look at the world, most of their spy efforts, I don't know about money or people, is in
right.
Holland because they are trying, and that's the one weak link that they have. They would dominate by incredible amounts the chip industry. The one thing that they're weak on is the is it lithographics or the I'm not saying it
Yeah,
right, but the
yeah,
ACML, ALCM.
right. Yeah,
I have notes in front of me.
the lithography,
Lithography. Thank you.
like chip making machines. Yeah,
Thank you.
it's just the fabs, right? And the
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, right. I mean, well, they're, I mean, the Chinese are engaged in a broad effort to steal
ASML.
technology across the board, from Boeing jet
Sure.
planes to, uh, you know, the these the Dutch fabs. Yeah, I mean, they're an all-out effort to just steal as much technology as they can. I mean, that's kind of known and undermine critical infrastructure in Western countries.
Sure.
Salt Typhoon, Volt Typhoon, these are cyber attacks that are very
Yeah.
popular, and they were publicized by the US specifically to let people know that this is what the Chinese government is doing.
But
So,
we're in this mindset that that's like, oh, that's wrong. And it's just like, how could they do this to us? It's like, guys, have we forgot? Are we that out of touch that we think that this new Pax American? I think what's happened is after Russia fell, after the USSR, if I should say, fell, we've been in this kind of dreamlike state where we forgot what it means to have a rival and an enemy. I won't say an enemy, but a rival at least. Where they were
adversary.
doing, the Russians were doing, yeah, adversary, thank you. The Russians were doing this to us left and right. We were used to that in
Mhm.
the 70s and
Yep.
80s. We were expecting it. And then we kind of then it calmed down and we were all just like, great, everyone's and we're in this la la land mindset where we think, oh, that's not nice of them. Of course we were probably stealing technology from the Russians, and the Russians were stealing from us. I wouldn't doubt any of this was going on. Of course, there's probably lots of evidence of that. And so, yeah, they're going to do whatever it takes to not be dependent on the U.S. And then once they do get these machines, their chip industry will skyrocket, and they will be able to win the future. I do think having the chips is really the key to unlocking the future, because once you have the chips, and by the way, we have decided, as I told you, my message, I have a lot of angry messages I send you. We have decided in our country that we're going to poo-poo for the last 30 years on any kind of manufacturing. That's for losers. I
Yeah.
literally listened to a fucking obnoxious podcast by a bunch of fucking obnoxious techies less than 6 months ago, and these highbrow pieces of shit were sitting on this sitting in the Bay Area, and they were criticizing the Trump administration tariffs, and they're like, and they're still singing that stupid old song of like, well, actually, the only thing that really matters is services. It's not about these lowly manufacturing jobs. Who
Yeah.
cares if China takes them, dude? You can't you don't
Yeah.
understand. The next wave is not fucking software. The next wave of who controls the future is robotics. And if you don't know how to make anything because you forgot how to put two pieces of metal together, that's your problem. You're going to lose, and we're going to lose. And if you give
Yeah.
chips plus AI plus robots means you have the future armies, and you will win not just the economy, but you'll win the entire
Well,
game. It's a game of risk.
more to that point is 90% of rare earth elements, which are needed for advanced, weapon systems, including those drones, is controlled by China, the processing.
Right?
70% of rare earth elements come out of the ground in China. 90% of the processing happens
Oh,
there. They're not stupid. They've been
no.
working their way into increasingly important supply chains of national security importance, to include critical minerals for chips, for highly advanced chips. They they installed those rare earth element export controls right last week,
Mm-hmm.
as a way
Wow.
to show that they can
Wow.
choke off the world supply.
Yeah.
We would be insane if we don't find ways to bring that processing back home. And these idiots who criticize the idea of trying to maintain some sort of industrial base, it's just the dogma on free trade, for so long has been patronizing. It's been across the Western world too. I was talking to a Spanish
Mm.
guy yesterday who works for a petroleum company, and he just said, like, all the elites and the leaders of our countries were talking about free trade, and you don't want those jobs. You don't want those jobs. You want these jobs, right?
Yeah.
You want these advanced jobs. You want these software jobs. You want these high productivity, high pay jobs. Let China have those, uh, you know, those dirty industry jobs, But here's the thing. So they've been telling us that for the last 20 years. China joined the WTO in the year 2001. By the way, they
Mm.
are still in the WTO as a developing country. That's bullshit, but
Mm.
okay, fine.
Interesting.
And that's another thing, right? The Trump administration is like, we need to do something about this, and it's like, yes, yeah. The first
Yeah.
Trump administration made a big deal about the systematic
The status.
unfairness of global trade. Right? They
Mm-hmm.
were the first people to ring that bell, as far as I can remember. Right? Uh, the Democrats would do things about it, but not loudly and not
Yeah.
aggressively, which is their mistake. They would almost
Yeah.
do the stuff in secret, and all the loud stuff was the
Yeah.
bullshit
Good
culture
point.
war stuff. That was the loud stuff.
Right.
all this thing about like temporary protected status and refugees, that was the loud stuff. And the like, let's make American infrastructure great again. I mean, they did tout the infrastructure,
Yeah,
the IRA. They did tout that though. They made a
thankfully.
hardcore campaign about this. It was so good, even Republicans
Yeah,
had to try to take credit for some of these infrastructure projects in their backyard,
true.
even though they didn't vote for the act.
Mm.
But yeah, this idea of maintaining an industrial base, this idea of, oh, free trade and let's have only good jobs in this country. Okay, fine, but our leaders and our politicians did nothing to make sure that that job
Mm-hmm.
transition would happen. I've heard administrations talk about it since Clinton, right in the
Mm.
90s. That was a big free trade, flat Earth. What was supposed to call the is that the flat Earth thing?
Global,
That
one
the
world.
world is flat. That's like in the early 2000s.
Oh,
I want
okay,
to say
got it.
Friedman.
Interesting.
Since Clinton,
Mm.
people have been talking about, oh wow, America is gonna like be this highly advanced country that sells services and has these high productivity jobs. The elite have made a ton of money. Working wages have been
Yeah.
stagnant for 50 years. Those are numbers. I mean, like, it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't matter what politics you have. Uh,
Sure.
the rest of us have been getting royally fucked, and this transition never happened. And some politicians have eaten around the edges of this. They've tried, not very hard, to actually create some job transition things, eating around the edges
Sure.
of it. No one, no government in this world has really taken on carefully a planned transition to
Mm.
that high productivity economy. Is it even possible, right? Who
Mm.
knows? But I look at
Mm-hmm.
countries like Germany. I mean, that's the thing we all point to, right? Just like a
Sure.
highly complex industrial base.
Yep.
They've managed to keep a lot of blue collar jobs. You can not go to college or university in Germany and
Yeah.
still have a good, decent job.
There's a
And
pathway.
we have so de-emphasized that. So even this Trump administration push for reindustrializing America, once again, the gripe, American workers have been left behind.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And they've been left behind in a lot of ways. What do you think mass illegal immigration is about? It's about having a huge amount of labor
True.
that is super cheap and off the books. American
Yeah.
labor should be
Absolutely.
furious at this. Any working
Yeah.
person should be furious at the mass illegal immigration, right? Because it's who benefits. Why is nothing being done about immigration? Because people are benefiting
Mm-hmm.
from it. That's why, and it's
Yeah.
just not the average person. And so reindustrializing the U.S., putting more, forcing countries to invest here. Yeah, that goes against all the tenets of free trade.
Yeah.
It goes
True.
it goes against all the tenets of a free market economy. But we need some of that. We
Yeah.
need some of that. We need our government to protect jobs. Protectionism is always used as a dirty word amongst free traders. But okay, free traders, we've had 30 years of free trade. What the fuck?
Yeah.
We have a country, the United States, that is about to tear itself apart over what free
Right.
trade has done to this country.
And free trade was never in the Constitution. That came later. What's in the Constitution is abiding by the Constitution, by the laws. I don't think this country necessarily said it was ever going to be a free trading economy, but we've somehow believed that that's what the U.S. has to be by default. And I think to your point, I, people have made a lot of money. That's the truth. And
Yes.
people have made a lot of money in software and services. And so there's a
But
belief that
who has
that's
made
the
that
only way
money?
to make money.
Just ask your
Right.
question.
Exactly. The elite.
We won't know. Who has benefited from all this free
Yeah.
trade? The statistics
Mm-hmm.
tell you everything you need to know. Forget politics, forget ideology. Just be practical. What has happened
Yes.
to our economy? What has happened to life expectation? We're the only advanced country where life expectation went down. Our health
That's crazy.
outcomes,
Yeah.
wages, concentration of wealth, inequality. Look at any of these numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what populists point to. But then their solutions
Yeah.
are mass police in the street, warrantless arrests, arresting American citizens. Arresting American citizens. How come conservatives are not losing their mind about that?
Yeah.
Right?
That's
How
wild.
come liberals weren't losing their minds about mass immigration, uh, the threat that people on the border feel about mass immigration, uh, the idea that you can have these like uncontrolled mass enclaves of what are essentially poor working people from another country
Hmm.
speaking another language. It's completely unplanned, just like the job transition was unplanned. The free market economy was
Hmm.
unplanned, and people have suffered. Where's the outrage from all of those Democrat politicians about the damages that illegal immigration does? It's also dehumanizing to the immigrants themselves, by the way.
Hmm.
Where is the conservative outrage over the massive violations of free speech, political prosecutions? I hear MAGA folks say all the time, well, you started it, right? So you
Yeah,
started it. There's only two sides to every issue. I was a person who thought that the volume of criminal cases at the state and federal level brought against Trump was counterproductive, not practical, but
sure.
also not very fair. The campaign laws that he broke, how many people have broken those same campaign laws and you haven't gone after them? How that case against him for the campaign fraud, how is that not considered selective prosecution? I mean, really? In New York,
Absolutely, yeah.
that the New York state attorney can bring
It
that,
just was clear. Yeah,
I'm sorry, the New York district attorney, like that is super selective, right?
yeah.
And the actual case, the one that Jack Smith had, that's the real case. That's the
Mm.
one that breaks our norms. If we can't have democratic processes, none of the results
Yeah,
matter. But people are so
right.
desperate. I get it. I totally get it. And we form these bands where you just never go against your tribe. That's that only benefits elites. That whole attitude
I've
of
not
like,
heard
don't go against
any.
your tribe.
I've really heard. Actually, I've not heard anyone on almost either side say something in a long time. Like, I will. I used to have this, high school teacher that said something like, I will. I may disagree with you, but I will fight to the death to defend your ability to, or your right to say what you have to say.
Yeah,
I haven't heard that kind of sentiment in a very long time from either side. I think they all scream fire with this whole free speech thing, unless it's them unless it's, you know,
that's it.
uh,
And Bill, I think I love Bill Maher's show because of this exact reason,
mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah,
Bill Maher has said it. Bill Maher has said like yeah, like you have to let people speak, and supposedly MAGA is obsessed over free speech, right? Rightfully so, under the Biden administration,
sure.
over the discourse on COVID, lab leak theory,
Mm-hmm.
masking, government shutdowns, right? Like the criticism that came from, and
Sure.
it's not even conservatives. It was I would say there
Yeah.
was a lot of conservatives complaining about the shutdowns and not the shutdowns, the closures of schools specifically,
Mm-hmm.
masking laws. There were a lot of far, I mean, I don't know if you call them left. I mean, the people saying left and right, that doesn't mean anything anymore. These conscious, hippie people in their enclaves in Southern California also hated vaccine
Yeah,
mandates and mask
absolutely.
mandates.
That's true.
But if you cannot have a conversation about vaccines, if you cannot have a conversation about the
Yeah.
efficacy of mask mandates, if you cannot have a conversation about
Yeah.
what is the point of closing a school, what are other damages being done here, right? I hear conservatives talk all the time about shutting down the schools. Kids aren't getting COVID. They can transmit it, but they're not the ones
True.
dying in the hospitals. Well, they can transmit it to their grandparents. That's
Mm-hmm.
why you're supposed to close the schools. Also, teachers can get
Mm-hmm.
COVID and die. And you want to be forced to go to work where you can die?
Yeah.
Probably not, right?
Right.
But we can't have that conversation. They shut down that conversation on social media, right? That
Right.
those were considered things that got blocked.
True.
If you cannot have those conversations in the open and make the good case for the smart, sensible policy, it will go underground and fester, and then in the
Yeah,
populist
exactly.
uprising, it becomes king. And
I
those
mean, it's
people
absolutely true.
and those people who felt like their discourse was shut down now want to shut down your discourse. Just
Yeah.
like with the DEI initiatives, people from marginalized communities have been repressed and ignored for so long that once they had the ability to do it, they
Yeah.
repressed and ignored other people.
Right. Right.
Intolerance
That's
breeds intolerance.
yeah,
That's how it
that's right.
works. And so for me, you know, why where's the outrage over these free speech issues? It's because there's ideology and partisanship. You pick a
Mm.
side and you defend it. No one's actually thinking about their politics. There are some people, right? So I think Bill Maher is a person who really does think about their politics. Some people have managed to wiggle out of their little like silo that they're in. People in the MAGA sphere who are public figures, they will be their power to actually influence, be part of the conversation, will be taken away if they disagree with the president. So they don't. I get
Yeah.
it.
Right.
Just like under the under previous administrations, if you are a CEO, if you're a public figure, and you say something like, you know what, I actually do believe that biological sex should be the determinant for how we deal with each other on gender. I mean, I don't agree with that statement, but you couldn't say that and be a public figure and continue
No.
to direct movies in Hollywood or have
Oh
a
yeah.
you know what I mean? Like you couldn't do the thing. You're not even a political figure, but you cannot say something that's outside
Yeah.
of the dogma, or you'd get
Right.
crushed. And that's what's happening now with the MAGA movement. People who want to be reasonable are not allowed to be. Ben Shapiro goes in the real time with Bill Maher and has some reasonable talking points.
Hmm.
uh, this whole thing with the FCC and Jimmy Kimmel, you had people who suddenly realized, oh wait, you know what? Actually, you can't do that yet. Fucking Ted Cruz even said something. That's how
Yeah. No,
crazy
it's
it got,
true.
and he's super hyper partisan,
Right.
and he's one of these guys who's very political and won't be a fair
Hmm.
arbiter on any issue because he's a
Sure.
politician.
You
But
know it's bad when he's saying that.
even he managed to say something. So to me, this this issue of reindustrializing our economy, this issue of protecting parts of our economy, of helping workers through means that are not free market mechanisms, that is completely fine by
Yeah.
me because I don't have an ideology about it. I
Yeah.
don't. I'm not part of the Democratic Party, so I don't get angry when Trump does something. I don't knee jerk go against it. So he's used tariffs to get countries to the negotiating table, right? There are 7 countries in the region where I live that have gone to the negotiating table and are establishing a bilateral trade agreement,
Yeah.
right? Malaysia is going to sign one that's this coming up week if the president comes to the region. Indonesia, Cambodia,
Hmm.
Philippines, Thailand. These are all countries that have made a huge effort to
Hmm.
come to negotiate a bilateral trade agreement because they have a ton of non-tariff trade barriers. For example, just one stupid
Hmm.
example, the United States makes excellent undersea cables for power and
Hmm.
for information for
Hmm.
telecommunications. We are one of the premier providers of this service.
Interesting. Basically,
And
the fiber
so, undersea
optics.
cables, if you want to repair an undersea cable that lands in Indonesia, the Indonesian government requires you to use their uh,
Hmm.
cable repair boat to do it. You can't use
Hmm.
your own. You can't bring a repair cable uh, boat
Into their
because
waters.
it requires a lot of maritime activity and it
Got
takes
it.
a lot of effort and time. You're in a deep sea environment. You need a ship to find the cable, trace it, find the place where it's broken or where you need the maintenance. You need to send a crew of machines and specialized robots down to the bottom, and you need to repair the cable. And you're operating in waters of a country, and the whole point of an undersea cable is to connect different countries that otherwise wouldn't have another good path for telecommunications, right? 97, 98%, depending on the statistic you use or how you measure it, anywhere between 89 to 97% of all internet traffic passes through undersea cables. So
Hmm.
we want to build more undersea cable connections in Indonesia and all over this region. But if you want to repair that cable, you have to use their repair boat. They have one repair boat.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
according to some private sources that I've talked to, like AP Telecom and other tech companies, that boat is never actually ready to be used.
Hmm.
So this, the protectionism that Indonesia imposes
Yeah.
severely limits their development because U.S. companies could
Sure.
come in here and 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 land more undersea cables, create a bigger
Yeah.
bandwidth of internet. The internet sucks here, generally speaking, in Indonesia, but they're protecting their own. They're protecting their own industries, right?
Hmm.
So I get it. You want to protect your own industries, but then actually develop them. There is no plan. There's
Yeah.
only protectionism.
Well,
So
it's interesting as you're talking, I'm thinking how we have tried to make these kind of agreements before, these like bilateral agreements and all this stuff,
yeah,
and yet we did so with basically no teeth. Just like we just were like, well, we're the US. Of course you want to do business with us. But we never really said, hey, you have all these tariffs on us. Take them down or else. We never
yeah,
that's just not an option. So it is interesting to hear, this different approach. And I guess what I would say now that we've kind of discussed the problems with the potential for losing freedom, some free speech. I, by the way, as an aside, I met with a client this week who she expressed to me her strong interest in one day coming to the U.S. legally, and I said, well, why? And she said, you know, in my country, I just don't have, I can't talk. I'm not allowed to talk. I'm not allowed to say much. She was very frustrated by it, and I had always thought, well, maybe people in her country, I won't say what country it is. Maybe I thought, well, maybe people in her country don't know what they're missing out on. They don't really have anything to say anyway. There's no, like, I don't want you to hear that as a big complaint typically.
Mm,
And I have friends that live there, and they've even said to me, like, oh, you know, people don't care about not having free speech here because what are they going to talk about anyway? They're not, you know, they don't have a lot to say. So I kind of
right.
believe that narrative. And as I talked to her, she was very honest with me and says, no, we do. I and a lot of my friends do have a lot of things to say. We're just scared to say it. And it was a good reaffirmation of like, yeah, well, that makes sense. Of course. Why wouldn't you want the freedom to speak? And I just said to her, well, you know, I hope that that we still have it by the time you do move here, if
Yeah.
you ever do, because I'm not sure we're going to have it. And so with that in mind, what do you think will happen realistically? Is this just a stirring of the pot that we kind of needed a refresh, maybe a burning like a forest fire to kind of like burn everything to the ground a little bit, and then we can grow from there? And we're going to be back in our you know, our free speech mindset and our following the norms of the Constitution. Are we going to get back to the Constitution? What are your thoughts as somebody who studies history and politics?
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, I heard someone much smarter than me get asked this question, and he said we need to go to war with China.
Oh, okay.
A war
Well,
with China will fix it.
we'll fix it.
So
Okay, great. Well,
yeah,
that's doesn't
no, no,
sound
that will
promising.
unify this country and get us out of this hyper polarized state we're in. So
Hmm. But
there
it
it
only
is.
works if you win the war. Only kind of works if you win the war. What if you lose the war and suddenly you really lose your freedom because now you have you know, one country who has very different values about free speech, putting their values on you, and very
Well,
likely,
so that would require China to invade the U.S., which is not going to happen. I mean, they might try,
well,
but it won't succeed. I mean,
interesting.
if you don't believe me, just look how hard it is to govern Americans when you're an American. So yeah,
Yeah,
no,
it
I
is,
mean,
but it's not. I mean, it doesn't seem to me out of
if
the
the U.S. goes to
question.
war with
We
China, it will be in the
Mhm.
Pacific. It
Okay.
won't be Red Dawn, and it won't be the United States invading China either, right?
Yeah.
It'll be missiles.
At
If
the
it gets to
beginning,
that point,
yes. Yeah.
what you know, I think this was the whole point of that movie on Netflix. Ethan Hawke, Julia Roberts. Ugh, it's famously produced by Obama.
Hmm.
What our next generation of war is going to look like
Oh,
is
okay.
Ukraine if someone gets invaded, like Taiwan might end up looking like Ukraine. But what it looks like
Hmm.
for us, so the things I mentioned earlier, salt typhoon, typhoon voltage. So wait,
Yeah.
salt typhoon, volt typhoon. For those who are listening, if there's anyone listening, look it up. Uh, they have placed sleeper threats in our critical infrastructure. What does that look like?
Sure.
It looks
Yes.
like it looks like a sanitation plant that can no longer function, so you're not getting
Hmm.
fresh water.
Right, right.
It looks like you don't have electricity. It
Yeah.
looks like you don't have internet. That's what it looks like. Okay, traffic lights in your city don't work.
Sure.
That's what that looks like, right? Bridges don't operate. If there are bridges on rivers that need to open to allow boats to go through, that's the kind of attack we would see happen. We would
Yeah.
see hacking of computer systems, both defense and civilian hospitals. Uh, you would see missiles potentially being launched at U.S. targets in the Pacific. But then, if the war got bad enough, yeah, I mean, we would see missiles launch in
Yeah.
American civilian areas. This
In
is
the
what we're talking
US
about. We're not talking about
on
invading
soil.
armies and anyone. We're not talking about PLA patrolling outside of Des Moines. We're talking
Hmm.
about the deaths of hundreds of thousands of Americans.
Sure. Well, okay.
which is
Yes, but then there
being
is a
arguably
winner. There
worse.
are winners of wars and there are losers of wars,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
we've seen countries take over, being taken over.
Yeah.
It's not out of the question. You know, again, what I would say is it's interesting. I was thinking about the wars that the West has fought in Asia in the past 100 or so years. Let's think about
Hmm.
this for a moment. Um, outside, whenever you've had, and this is again, I'm not a historian, so I could be wrong by this, but whenever I've
Sure.
heard of or seen a Western power fighting a war against an Asian power, the track record is pretty bad for the Western powers in terms of actual success. There's only one instance in which an Asian power surrendered to a Western power that I can think of, and that would have been Japan. But after two nuclear weapons were used. Before that, there was no intention of surrendering, despite losing, despite the fact that they probably should have, and it would have been wise to. There's many stories about how they had zero intention of ever surrendering. You look at Vietnam, truce. You look
Yep.
at Korea, truce. Very hard to beat, very hard. These were very hard
Actually, Korea
wars.
has no truce right now. It has a ceasefire. That's it.
Ceasefire.
There's only a
What I
ceasefire.
meant is more of a
There's no
ceasefire.
peace treaty.
Yeah, mostly just it didn't work. Like there was no taking over the country. There was no like, well, we made all this progress. Now we've won. We've gotten their
Well,
surrender.
actually,
It didn't
the only
happen.
reason South Korea exists is because we fought that war, right?
Absolutely, and I think about that because I happen to be married to a South Korean,
Oh
and
yeah, man.
I often think and say to her,
You're welcome.
uh, no, but I say it's interesting that you were born. If you had been born 100 miles north of where you were born, you might
30,
not, you know, you're not 30 miles. You might not be actually a free person. And
right?
it's kind of shocking. And
Yeah.
yeah, if the U.S. had not been there, because we've talked about, the U.S. is good with its dominance and stuff. And it's like, well, in this case, it was thankfully a very good. In many ways, it led to a lot of prosperous people in the
Yeah,
country, and on
that's
the
right.
other side, complete poverty. So it's all
Yep.
complicated. But what I would say is, uh, my thought about the U.S. getting into a war with China does. I'm very skeptical of an easy win. Let's just say that. It would be a
Oh no, no.
very difficult
I think
war.
you're absolutely right. Because you'd have to define, right? What does winning look like? The most popular, I guess, most probable scenario is
Hmm.
China attempts to assert control over Taiwan militarily, in which the U.S. and our allies, including maybe Japan, Korea, maybe Australia, respond.
Yeah.
And there are different scenarios have been drafted up that are available for public consumption. But
Yes.
what it looks like is initially a skirmish over Taiwan. There is no skirmish over Taiwan that does not immediately result in China attacking U.S. military targets in
Sure.
First Island chain. That's the number one thing that happens, right? So, Guam. Um, I don't know if the well, so we have missiles, right? We have missiles
Yeah.
stationed in Japan, Korea, Philippines. Those were all
Yeah.
targets. Uh, we have islands, Pacific Islands, where we've put equipment. We're placing more and more Marines and equipment in Australia. So yeah, I mean, those are all targets. There's no way China would make an aggressive military move in Taiwan without a target, without attacking these targets. The minute we respond, they might try it and then see how we respond. That's the whole point. China has this thing called these gray zone tactics, in which they raise the temperature little by little, right? So
Yeah.
every year, if you pay attention, there's an unprecedented move that China has done that is not outright war. Every year they do this.
Right.
So first, if the Taiwanese president even utters any phrase that goes against the one China's one child one China um, principle, they do military exercises, right? So now they consider almost everything provocative. Elections are provocative,
Yeah.
and if you look at a map of Taiwan where they have sent their military to do drills, they train in their military drills to cut off Taiwan completely by sea and by air, and they've been more aggressive about where they do the drills, and that's how they communicate their intentions is where they do the exercises, and every year they ratcheted it up. And the idea is that eventually, because of these gray zone tactics invading their airspace, they have violated Japan's airspace. Every time they do this, it is provocative, but only a little bit. So
Right.
all these gray zone tactics get to the point where by the time they're ready to actually do what they're going to do, they will have been able to assert physical control over the island and defend it before we're able to respond, because they do so many things that are on the verge of it anyway. It might look like a military exercise when they do it, but then
Yeah.
it's just a full-on cutting off of the island. They fight people on the island while they keep us away from it, right? By
Yeah.
denying us the area, by sea using anti-ship missiles, by air by using drone swarms, by using
Mhm.
radar technology, by using missiles. They basically deny us access to that area just long enough to get control
Impressive.
of the island. And once they have control of the island, we would have to
Yeah.
invade to
They're
get
kind
rid
of
of
just
it.
doing drills to show that they can do it.
Exactly. And but they've been working their way towards that little by little, these gray zone tactics and provocations and
Interesting
diplomatic
question though,
efforts.
because maybe 5 years ago, my thought was, wow, China seems like they will need to take over Taiwan if they really want to seal their deal of the future. And my sense recently, as I've been thinking about this, is maybe it's a moot point anyway to take over Taiwan. It might just be a little trophy for them, because the truth is two things. Like, let's say they take over them right now today. Well, without ASL, let's see if I can speak ASML. That ASML, all they have are factories that can't make real chips past the ones that basically you freeze progress because you can't get the lithography. So what's the benefit? What's the big prize there? You get just current generation chips and that's it. That's not a huge prize, and it's certainly not worth the risk of a big war and all the fallout from that just to get a locked in
Yeah, but
technology that
you
doesn't give
disrupt
you that doesn't.
advanced chip supply for the world, and it's
I
something they don't
guess
have
so,
any.
but you do it for yourself too. So it's a big cost for, again, a frozen technology. The moment you invade, you've frozen those chips in place. They cannot progress anymore. Now, if on the other hand, if you put your focus, instead of trying to waste your time on in Taiwan, and you put your focus on trying to replicate ASML, you have a much better chance of the future. And you don't even have to get into war for it. So I would
Yeah, but
say
the problem
again,
is, so the Chinese Communist Party tends to be very practical and kind of like benefit focused for their people, not on this issue. This is deeply personal. Every
yeah,
Chinese person who's grown up in mainland China has been taught that Taiwan is China's little sister. It is a member of their family that has been, torn away by Western powers,
sure,
and that they deserve to have Taiwan back under full Chinese control. It is non-negotiable. It is one of their highest priorities,
sure.
and it is completely nonsensical. But so many parts of national priorities are nonsensical. I mean, you look at America's priorities, you could probably find some nonsensical things in
But
there.
wouldn't you wait? But from a practical point of view, yes, you may really want this island. But wouldn't you wait until you had full? Again, once you get that lithography technology as equivalent to the Dutch, you have all the pieces to basically outpace the rest of the world in chips. And once you get that, now you can really go to town with your military. And then once you get to a certain level, that's the time to take over Taiwan. Not before that. I would say wait until you actually
Yeah,
get all the pieces in place. Maybe 10, 15 years. You can wait a little bit, wait this long, then go after once your
yeah.
military is unstoppable with amazing AI robots.
If they were
You'll
being
be able to have,
rational, yeah, I think that would totally be a
yeah.
thing. However, this is one of the areas of their policies that are completely not rational. It's
And as I've said, the
them.
Dutch, knowing how many Dutch people I've met, are, I would say, quite blasé about China taking their amazing technology. And I don't think they even would care that much. Like, I think they're almost reluctant, as I said, to follow because they're kind of like, yeah, the US is bossing us around, telling us like we can't export this to China. But they were happy to do it before. And I think the only reason they're not doing it is because they've been told not to. But do they really care? No. And would they be like, yeah, no big deal? If some IT guy saw some weird stuff going on in the network with some Chinese characters, yeah, maybe he'd report it. Maybe he'd be like, well, yeah, they're stealing from us. Who cares? I don't know. That this is my uninformed mindset. But knowing some Dutch people and stereotyping them, I don't think they give a shit. I think they're like, yeah, too bad. Things happen. What you gonna do?
Oh, they're Italian suddenly from New Jersey.
Yeah,
Ja,
Martin
oké,
was
so you took the chips,
ach ja,
oké.
yeah,
Going to have a smoke, going to
thankfully,
have a smoke in the crap.
thankfully, right. Thankfully, Italians are not the ones with the technology. Otherwise, it'd be way worse. They'd be like, "Yeah, you go and
The Dutch would be
deliver it to
like,
you."
hey, I'm making chips over here.
I
All right, well, I think we've reached the natural end of this discussion.
think so. I think so. But this has been good. Tell me about your workout routine though, since you started with this. What is your tell me about
Yeah,
your
mhm.
personal, tell me about the
Yeah,
personal. What's going on with
absolutely,
the
man. Front
personal?
delts are
You
being totally
started,
capped out by my incline bench press. So when I do
oh
my
damn.
splits, I put some cable side raises,
Mhm.
create that full load at full extension to to go ahead and stimulate that peak hypertrophy. It's an S
Yeah.
tier exercise.
Hypertrophy.
You
Yeah.
you have to get see you got to you have load at full extension, my friend. That's where the study after study, science based weightlifting will tell you
You remind me
that
of like the Music Man.
you want the muscle to be at full stretch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
side delts, man. Yeah, you can hit those with front raises, and I do have plenty of those in there. I don't want anyone tweeting at us about that. I do have plenty of
Let's see
upright
this.
rows,
Do you have the setup
plenty of
behind you?
upright
Can you
rows.
show
Lead with
us?
the elbow.
Hmm.
Obviously, don't please don't write to us about that. They're in there. Just because I haven't
Yeah.
mentioned it, they're in there. But because you got to switch it up, get the body guessing, but also to create just a load applied at full stretch, you need to get that side shoulder muscle. The arms got to come down, and you need resistance. You can't do that with gravity in a dumbbell. Everyone knows that. And so you need to get that cable to pull your shoulder a full extension.
True.
That way you can pull up against it with a
Wouldn't
slight outward angle towards the
wouldn't free
front and
weights
to
be a
the
little
right.
more effective since you seem to be such an enthusiast? Aren't free weights the way to go? Machines seem to be
No,
like
man,
the
this is
movie.
oh man, how much time do we have? This is such an ignorant view. I don't even know where to begin
Oh
to talk
God.
about this.
Yeah.
Yes, under certain conditions, the free weights will help build up the stabilizer muscles, but then we got to come back to basics, man. What do you want to do? This is just like how America hasn't had a fully coordinated, well thought out jobs transition for the 21st American century economy.
Right.
You are not fully planning out a muscle transition plan for muscles of the 21st century, my friend. We both got dad bods. I know that. I have a fat one, you have a skinny one. I get it. But
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, free weights are great for being able to build a stabilizer muscles, but you're not going to
I think
get the maximum growth out of that. Maybe guys like you and me should
you
focus
kind
on
of
free
look like
weights,
you
but
know
you're
what you're
telling
talking
me,
about.
man, how are you going to
Yeah.
get the resistance and the load applied at
You
full stretch of the muscle, which is how you stimulate
yeah.
muscle growth? How are you going to get that when the position you're in and the way that gravity is pointing does not actually lead to it? I'll give you a little example. Side raises. You put that arm down by your side, the weight pulls down towards gravity, your muscle has absolutely that shoulder side muscle has no tension in it. You got no tension.
You remind me of that podcast I was telling you at the beginning, and I have to say, you really it's almost like you're channeling him. He's a total know-it-all, and he will pontificate
Yeah.
4 hours on end about
I mean,
such activities.
I just pretended for three
Yeah, of
minutes and I
course,
kind of
of
want to
course.
take a shower. I feel disgusted.
Well, what is it? But seriously, though, what is going on? Let's hear the personal. We've done. I think this is a good model, by the way. I think we should always start with
Let's
the
end it on a
world,
bullshit topic. Okay.
and then
Yeah,
zoom
sure,
in
man.
on the personal.
Let's zoom in on the
What's going
personal.
on personally
I'm probably about
with
20 to
E?
25 pounds overweight. It drives me
And it
insane. I
doesn't have to
hate
be
it.
about your health, by the way. But let's go there. Why
That's fine. No, no, I want
not?
to. I want to,
Okay,
man.
great.
I got here and I got a doctor to prescribe me Ozempic.
Oh
My
yeah.
body fat percentage is technically in the obese range. It's over 30%. I got a prescription for
How is that?
Ozempic.
Have you tried it?
I tried you titrate up towards a higher dose. So we went from
Okay.
0.25 to 5.5. I'm sorry. The 0.5 dose was working for a little bit, but I plateaued, man. Like I basically jumped
Okay.
my weight goes up between 210 pounds down to 203. It
Hmm.
can't seem to break out of that bandwidth. Um, so for me, each person's health goals are separate. So for my health goal is, 20% body fat when I'm just kind of hanging out and having fun. I can get it
Yeah.
down to 17% when I want to train up and look good. That's my goal, right? I'm far from
Okay.
that goal. I'm at
Cool.
30%. How you get that percentage
Okay.
to go down? You increase the amount of muscle, you decrease the amount of fat. Pretty straightforward, right?
Sure.
So
Easy.
it's really hard. You can do it. There are studies out there now that show us that you can gain muscle and lose fat at the same time. We're talking about very small deltas, though. You're losing a little bit of fat over time. You're gaining a little bit of muscle over
Mm-hmm.
time,
Sure.
typically through what they call zone two cardio, basically like fast walking. If you fast walk for 30 to 45 minutes every day, you are more likely to expend fat than other sources of energy that your body
Yeah.
looks for, right? The first place your body goes for energy is glucose.
Hmm.
You know that. The second,
Yeah.
it'll go after what is easily available. If you're doing hard cardio, you're probably going to end up losing muscle, right? It'll go for muscle.
Makes
If you
sense.
have a less intense exercise, 85 was a 60 to 80% of max heart rate, then you have more of a fat burning, but you're always burning a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
It's not like your body just switches automatically to just one whole energy source. So also there's a study that showed, I recently heard about on Huberman's podcast, which I really like.
Oh, you've
an,
been
ex-
listening to
an,
that. Okay.
an exercise scientist talked about a study that showed that whether you're fasted or not makes no difference over
Hmm.
the course of the day of
Hmm.
calories burned.
Interesting.
And there was this controlled study which he cited about, um, I can't remember if they were athletes or not, but basically they had one group doing zone two cardio, which is, like I said,
Hmm.
fast walking for 30 to 45 minutes a day, and then some weightlifting routine. And the key was that they were at a slight, and this is the controversial part, they were at a slight calorie surplus, but they still managed to lose fat and gain muscle.
That's cool.
But
I
if
have
you,
seen, by the way, as a diabetic, that the 30 minutes after I eat,
oh yeah, blood sugar drops way down. Yeah.
amazing results of
Yep.
just pure, like it is incredible the difference of not walking versus, and it's not very much time. So it is absolutely the case that you can really help your, I would guess that would have a big impact on insulin resistance.
Oh, I mean, that's it. So, Andrew Huberman talks about this on his podcast. He says basically, you know, two ways of getting into the fasted state. One is to absorb the blood sugar, and there are drugs that do that, which he did not recommend because it's a doozy on your
Like
body. But
which, oh, okay, like different drugs. Okay.
yeah, drugs that actually extract the glucose from the blood.
Yes, I agree. That's not great. Yeah.
And he
Hmm.
said the other way, which is really easy to do, is just walk for 30 minutes after you eat. He
Okay.
said
So
you get the
Ozempic
same.
is though not a targeting, it's not removing the sugar from the blood, it's
No,
actually
it's
just
a
preventing you
GLP
from
drug.
eating.
Yeah, so it controls, it controls the basic human digestion process,
But
right?
that
It
does
slows the
say,
basic.
as you're talking about like the way to lose weight or or to lose fat being exercise, it does still say a lot about diet because basically what Ozempic is doing is helping on the dietary side, not the exercise side, and the effects of that are pretty
Absolutely.
powerful.
Absolutely. And it's, so for me, I need most help on the diet side. I
Yeah.
love exercising. I exercise all the time. I've
Cool.
gotten,
Yeah.
I've been doing, there's this exercise protocol that I really like because it's easy to do. Anything that you can stick with is the right
Yes.
plan, right? Like
Totally.
you can have the best plan, but if you only do it twice and you say, fuck this, then
Yeah, no, I
it's not a
agree.
great plan, right?
Yeah.
So for me, it's been this body for life thing. It's
Oh,
20-minute
cool. Yeah.
running routine at
Alyssa did
intervals.
my wife did that many years ago and she loved it.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about what you can stick with because it won't be effective if you can't stick with it, right? I mean, that's just like the basics. So for me lately, it's been great at getting me to the gym and getting me exercising. I've noticed that my overall like physical fitness has improved, and it's lifting weights. It's lifting weights 3 times a week,
Hmm.
and it's doing a circuit,
Nice.
and
Okay.
five body parts, and then it's five body parts, and you do like a 35-minute routine. So it's not ideal for building muscle. It'll help you maintain muscle while you're trying to lose
Mm,
weight, which at
nice.
this point
That's great.
was all I'm hoping for. Because when I focus too much on building muscle, I notice my diet goes to hell.
Yeah, makes sense.
Wait,
Yeah,
hold on one
because you feel
second.
hungry.
Hold on
Mm,
one
yeah,
second.
sure.
Amor!
Well, that's cool. I'm glad you're. I'd like to hear how. I am curious about the Ozempic stuff because it seems like a pretty amazing drug. I'm curious to see how you'll like it in the long run, and if it
So
will
my
have that
but my
lasting
doctor
effect.
told me that in Indonesia, Wegovy just became available, so now he switched me to
Oh, okay.
Wegovy, which
All
is,
right. So same idea, right?
Ozempic is for diabetes, Wegovy is for actual weight loss. So
Oh, cool. Okay. Very good. Kind of to your point. I've been doing this thing, and I've just recently restarted again because I was feeling like a gross worm a few months ago, just like not exercising. I've been like doing hiking a few times a week, but what and late basically like rucking. I don't know if you've heard of rucking, but like you put some
yeah, of
weights in
course,
your
yeah,
backpack and you walk around, and that was
it's
kind of
been very
cool.
popular.
But I wasn't doing it enough. It was a big ordeal to get out there and actually do it. Um, so I just took up again this thing called the X3 bar. I think it's called X3, and it is the closest thing I've gotten to the exercise that just works for me. Like you're saying, it's basically you get a bar and you have four bands of different strengths, and you just do this four exercise routine every day. And it if you're spending more than 12 or 13 minutes doing it, you're doing it wrong. Like you should do the entire
Mm,
thing in 12 minutes, which is
okay,
perfect for me because I hate exercise, and I won't do it if it's an hour. I just won't do it. But if I can do it, what I've noticed that works for me is if I can do this in 12 minutes, um, and I basically make a rule for myself, like I can't have a second cup of coffee that day until I get it done.
okay.
Then I found that that combination works pretty well. Like I want the coffee, I'm tempted to go get it, and then I'm like, all right, oh, well, that's right, I have to do my 10-minute workout basically. And I have to say, I feel amazing. It's been 2 months now since I've been doing it every single day. I've maybe missed like 3 or 4 days, but because it's so quick and easy, I've been able to just keep it going. And at the beginning, I was like killer. I could barely do any of the exercises, and now it's like I'm just finding it to be super easy because I guess I built the muscle now. But anyway,
Hmm.
that's been a really easy one, and it's like you can pick up like the kit on Amazon for like $50, and just do it at home. So it's been nice for those who are looking for an easy exercise routine that they don't have to go anywhere, and also you can throw it in your suitcase and just kind of travel with it too, which is nice. So something to think about when you're on the road. But that's about it. We're still trying to get to Thailand. We are applying for the visa right now. And we have to have $32,000 at least in our account and not touch it for a few months. And so we're going to be starting that this month and trying to live as frugally as possible so that we don't dip into that 32K. And then once they approve us, we can I guess we might get like 5 years, which is a crazy amount of time if we actually approve it. Pretty damn good visa. So anyway,
Oh wow. Okay.
so yeah,
Nice.
it's impressive. So anyway, that's the goal. We're hoping to get approved for that. Again, it's up to them. We don't know, whether it's going to be or when it's going to be. But if we get approved sometime in January, we're going to take off and move across the world. And I'll be, I think, in your time zone or near there, from what I can see. So that should be cool.
Nice. Yeah, man. That'd be super awesome. Yeah, let's continue to keep updating us
Awesome.
on that. I mean,
Yes, I
us,
will update
me.
the group. Yeah, I will update you or the group, the people listening. All right, great. Well, this has been I think that's all I got. Anything else you want to bring up? What are you going to be doing the rest of your day today?
Oh man, we just so we when we moved here, we had a bunch of our stuff shipped over um what do you call that? Maritime freight.
Oh
And
yeah.
so it just
Uh-huh.
arrived. So we're we
Wow.
have
How
all
long
the
does it
shit.
take?
A couple months.
Okay. Wow.
So we're still putting stuff away, man. Like, woof, we got so much stuff. So I mean, it's good. I love having stuff. I love products.
You know,
So
I think that I would be tempted to do that, and the problem is I'll probably want to send myself a lot of junk, a lot of heavy junk that I don't need. And so maybe I have to think about this whether I should do that or not.
yeah, man, especially
We
having
were
kids, it's kind of a challenge. I mean, it's not impossible.
yeah.
I know people who've done it. But yeah, man, good luck to you. But yeah, so we have all this stuff, and we're trying to figure out how it works, how we put
Mhm.
everything away. We'll give away some stuff, which is fine.
Yeah.
The good thing is
You're a little
that
too
my
ambitious
wife
for
and
the
I are in
job.
the same thing of like, if we're gonna have it, let's have it organized and put away, and everything has a
That's
place.
good.
If not, let's get rid of it. So she's good about that.
Good for you. I wish we were similar to you both. We're more a little different between us on that one. Although I think in general we like to be clean, but it doesn't always work out that way. All right, sir. Well, good chatting. I think we've broken down the world pretty well. And if you, listener, enjoy this show, I know you're one of the 30 people listening per week. If you like the show,
I'm
please let others know and give us a rating or a review, a kind review in the Apple podcast app. And if you would like to drop us a note, we'll be starting to read listener emails next week, I think, right? We talked about that because we're getting so many.
yeah, yeah. Tell us, listeners, do you want us to, I don't know, make a cartoon drawing of the Prophet Muhammad or say something about Charlie Kirk? You just let us know.
Please do that and leave us a good review as well. Spread the word.
I'm
All right,
joking, by the way.
sir.
I live in a majority Muslim country. I cannot have people thinking.
You got to be careful.
Yeah.
You have to be careful.
All right.
All right. See you next time.
Yeah. Take care, Kay.